Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at some of the more interesting features around version control and some of the more interesting intricacies of some of that functionality. So let's start off with this document. Now if I left click this document, I'm going to open it up into Word Online, and if we edit this document, and we just come in here and say we're going to include the quality assurance department in this, and if I then just go back to the document, so what we see if we come back to that document is that the version number has increased, and that's because we made a change, and when we saved it, the version was saved, and therefore this number was incremented. And if we go back and have a look at the version history, we'll see that here that it was increased. Now what happens if I open this document, edit this document, and what happens if I click File, and now I save this file, and I don't check Replace Existing File, I just click Save. What we're going to see now when I go back is we're going to see a whole new document being added, and notice that we're at version 1. So what's important here is if you save the document and you don't check the box existing file, replace existing file, what's going to occur is you're going to create a whole new document. You're not going to replace the version that you were working on. So I think this is really important, and a lot of people get confused about that because we're very used to saving documents, and in this scenario, yes, you can save a document, but it will auto save for you. But if you do save a document, you need to make sure that you check that box to say replace existing file, otherwise you're going to create a new document and you're going to cause some trouble, certainly if you're working collaboratively with people. So there are a whole load of other functionality that we can look at. So for instance, what happens if we check out a document? So if we click the ellipsis and we say check this document out, notice we get this marker here that says the document's checked out. Now if I then go and edit this document, and I just make a quick change and I save that up, notice we moved that up to version 14. Also there's this column here that says checked out, and this tells me that this document is checked out to me. Now when I go and check that document back in, and I check that document back in, it's going to ask me, okay, you've checked the document back in, do you want to make a comment? And I check that back in. Now what we're going to get is that document then unchecks here, and we add that document in, and you see that we get that comment here, which is quite useful. Now if we drop back and we go and take a look at the version history here, you notice that we get the comment in the version history, which is really helpful if you've got a document where you've got lots and lots and lots of versions and you don't really know what changes have been made. Then this is really helpful to understand the context of the changes that have been made. But you only get this comments if you check the document in and out. So There are a number of other benefits to checking in and out documents. If you check out a document, nobody else can make a change to that document while you have it checked out. Now, this is a good thing and a bad thing. If you check that document out and then you go on holiday, you could have a problem because people can't edit that document. So if you go on holiday for 2 weeks, you've got a potential situation where the document can't be edited for 2 weeks. Now, there isn't an override from a administrative perspective where you can automatically check documents in and manage checked out documents if you have to. So there is an override, but obviously someone would have to request that. The plus side of checking things out is, as I said, people can't make a change to what you've got checked out. And the other part of having a document checked out is that the changes that you make are private. Only you can see those changes. So if you have documents that are sensitive, that shouldn't be shared, that you're making sensitive changes to, like a new HR policy as an example, and you don't want that information being shared with other people, check that document out and start making your changes. And that will ensure the changes that you're making are completely secure and private until you check that document back in. And we're going to talk a bit more now about some of the other functionality that's available here that then adds to that and enhances that. So if I just unselect that document and we go here and we're going to go to manage views, and this is going to drop us into the settings area. So if we click on version settings, this is the version settings panel for the entire list. And there are a number of key features here, and they work in combination together, and you can have there are a variety of combinations. This escalates up, if you like, the functionality of the document management library and version control and how it all works together. So just very quickly, I'll talk through each one and then we'll look at how some of this works. So the first one here that we've got is require content approval for submitting items. So if you check this, any item that is submitted back, i.e. you've checked it out, you're checking it back in, as an example, will require approval before it becomes a public document. And we'll talk more about what a public document is shortly, but this runs an approval system that requires those documents to be approved. Here we have 3 radio buttons. If we check the top one, what that means is there will be no version control. So you will be saving documents and you won't get that version incrementation that we saw when we saved the last document. So that's worth noting. This is the option that we had switched on, which is where major versions, and we saw that it went from 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So these are major versions. And it was saving those major versions. And this option is really the highest option, which is create major and minor draft versions. So the difference between a major version and a minor version will start 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4. A major version will start 10, 11, 12, 13. The difference between a major and a minor version, apart from the numbering and the incremental numbering system, is that a major version is classed as a published version. A minor version is classed as a draft and is not classed as published inside SharePoint's document library. Now, right at this moment in time, that really doesn't mean anything to you. But as we go further down, I'm going to explain, and you've got to start to see how that really impacts and works. Because as you begin to publish documents, what that really means is it becomes available to more people to view, more people to edit, more people to do any sort of functionality that you've allocated to them, providing that that document version is in a published state. And you can have a a document at 14 as a published state, and then you can have somebody making changes at 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, and that document, it's still the same document but with those iterations, those changes on it, but they will be in draft, so that people won't be able to see the forward versions. They will only be able to see the major version that you'd published. So what that means is you can still have a document published, still be working on it and updating it, yet the older version will still be available for consumption by people in your organization. And I think that's really powerful. And when you start to see that really work together, it becomes extremely powerful and useful, especially when you start using things like the content search web part, where it starts surfacing those documents and data to people in different streams and in different dashboards and in different search interfaces. So let's have a look what these mean. This checkbox works with this radio button, and as you go through these, notice as I click this one, the bottom one gets greyed out. So these work in different combinations. This first one talks about keeping the following number of major versions. So if I put in there 500 as an example, it will keep 500 versions of major versions of a document in the history, in the version history, that we can go back and pull that back. So it will store 500 versions of each document. So if you had 10 documents and you'd made 500 major changes, it would save 500 major versions of each document, providing you'd made 500 major changes. And this at the bottom here again is the same thing. This is draft, so it will keep 500 drafts of a document. So that's the minor changes. Now, one thing to remember here is this applies to every single document you ever load up then to this document library. And remember, this only applies to this specific document library. And obviously this requires that you have enough resources, enough hard drive space available in your farm to be able to manage that. So these numbers may be slightly less depending on the resources available to you in your farm. So this next component, who should see draft items in this library? Now remember, minor versions, saved versions, are drafts. So if you haven't checked this, if you're at this level here on this radio button, this will not be applicable and it won't work. But as you come down and you allow minor versions to be implemented, this then comes into play and says, okay, if you save a document and it's a minor version, who should be able to see that? So we've got any user has read items, only users who can edit items, only users who can approve items, and the author of the item. So instead of having to manage the permissions in this particular document library, what you can do here is you can allow groups to have access to this document library and then apply these rules on draft items against those permission sets of those users. So if you want your draft versions to be very secure and you don't want many people to see it, you would check this bottom option. And what's interesting is you can't check this bottom option until the approved section has been allowed. So you need to, and content approval is selected, and then this bottom option is available, which states only users who can approve items. Clearly that's logical, because if you don't require things to be approved, then surely users who can approve items would not be available, because nobody can approve items because it hasn't been selected. So just if you've got this checked on no, obviously you won't be able to select the bottom option. So this is at this stage only people that can approve and the author of the item can actually see the document. As you move up and draft items become available, as you move up, obviously the draft items become available to more people to see. And then we've got this bottom option, and this is quite important. Remember we talked about the check-in, check-out. If you check out a document, you have the ability to comment. Now in this scenario here, required documents to be checked out before they can be edited. What this is saying is you cannot edit a document unless you check it out. So let's select that. So this is going to force users to have to check out that document, which means they're going to get that option to fill in that comment as they edit that document. So content's approved, drafts are on. Only users who can approve items are going to be able to see a document when it gets approved, and every document has to be checked out now in order to edit that document. So let's go and see what that looks like. Let's click OK. So let's take a look at our document here. What happens if I click Edit? I'm going to edit this document, edit in browser. We get this warning now that says check out this document before editing it online. So straight away we've said that documents need to be checked out. We didn't check it out. So if I now click this, it's only going to open in read only. So what we're going to have to do from here is we're going to need to go back, and what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take a look at that document. We're going to need to click the ellipsis, and we're going to need to check out that document. So we've now checked it out and we get this. So let's go and make a quick change. Now we edit this document. The document now has been opened up. And if we now go back to the library, we notice that we start getting this incremental version here. Now let me just refresh this, because sometimes it doesn't always. Let's say 14.1. So we've moved up. Now if I just edit that document one more time, and I go back, okay, so we're here and we're on 14.1. So let's see what happens now if I check that document back in. So it says here, how do I now want to save this? What kind of version? If I save it as 14.1, it'll be a draft version. If I save it as 15, it'll be a published version. Also, when I check it back in, do I want to retain the checkout or not? So if it's checked out, people won't be able to see the changes that I've made. So if I say yes, okay, I want to retain my checkout, and I say if we now update this, click OK, what we see is it moves up to the next version, 14.2. We get our comments. Now across here, what we're looking for is this column here that says approval status. And what this says is that this document is in draft mode because it hasn't been approved. Now, if I come back here and I say, okay, I could discard the checkout. So if we discard the checkout, this is going to stop us from checking out this document. So it's going to check it back in. So let's do that. So discard the checkout. When we do that, it drops us back a version because we didn't check in the last change that we made. That we did, but we moved it up to 14.2 when we added in the other change. So there were no changes that were made. It was just ready to save when we made that next change. So we've now checked that back in, and if we click this ellipsis, we now have these two options: check out or publish. So let's see what happens if I publish this. We get comments. And we click OK. So what has happened now is the version is at 14.1, and if we come across here we'll find that the approval status has now moved to pending. So it went from draft to pending, and the reason it did that is because we had this document in draft, and in order for it to be a fully published document, this version needs to increase to a full number, so it would be 15. So if we now check this ellipsis, we go to more, and we now click this approve and reject, we get this status option. We can approve it, we can reject it, or it can be pending, which is the item will remain visible to its creator and all users who can see draft items. So that just explains to you where we are at the moment. So when we moved from the draft version to pending, actually we didn't, nothing changed. Only the person who created it and people who could see the draft could see it. Well, when it was in draft mode, that was still the case anyway. So as I said, it moved it up because it was in a draft state and it wasn't a full published version. So if we now click approved and let's say approve group changes, and we click OK, what we should see now as this moves up is we move up to 15, and what we should also see is the status move to approved. And what that means is when it moves to approved, the people that can see this document changes. It changes from that draft status where only a select few people could see it to people that have rights to read this document in this library can read this document because it is now in an approved state. So this is just outlined really some of the key steps, version control steps, some of the settings that are available, and some of the complexities, because it is complex. You won't be able to pick this up straight away and run with it. It does take a bit of understanding. You do need to understand the different statuses, and you do need to understand why would you want to do these things. And as you implement some of this functionality, it does make it more complicated. So you really need to understand the purpose of this document library, because you may have more than one document library based on the number of documents and the types of documents that you're storing, and you need to understand who may be working with these documents and what functionality you really need to put in place, because you don't need this complexity if the functionality isn't required. I'm now going to post a new video, and I'm going to take you through a further example of this with 2 users, so we can really see all of this functionality in action with 2 users with different permissions, and hopefully that will help to crystallize and allow you to completely grasp how this would work in an organization and collaboratively. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. There'll be many more videos being posted, and please join me in the next video. Thank you for watching.